Hello, and welcome to episode number 143 of the Savvy Social Podcast. This show is brought to you by Fan Booster by Traject, which is the world's most complete social media management tool. And it's my tool of choice when it comes to scheduling, managing, and especially reporting on social media. Try them out for yourself for free by clicking the link with this podcast episode or in the description of this video. I am super excited for today's guest, Cara Rice. She is a business coach, a certified trainer of NLP, and the founder of Mind Surgery Method, NLP practitioner training for coaches. We're going to go into her history, how she started her business, and all of this ties into our theme for the month, which is all about unmuting yourself. We want you to stand up and actually speak, use your vocal cords to talk about the difference that your business brings to the world. And if you want to explore this concept even more, join us in the Savvy Social School. We have just completed our challenge all about unmuting ourselves, and we have a special coaching session with Lana Hernandez to talk all about this in further detail. So definitely join us there. But without further ado, Cara Rice, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm super excited to I'm like geeking out about your history because I am a self-proclaimed introvert as well. I got in trouble in school for literally not talking.
Same.
Yeah. So I feel like there's some similarities there, but I know you started your business in 2013 and you were kind of scared to show your name and face online. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I was terrified. Like the best way to describe it is terrified. And my background is actually in advertising. So my first career, I guess you could say, was in advertising. And I was even terrified to speak up in team meetings at the agency. So if I was in a team meeting of more than 10, it's like you put the 11th person in the room and I would break out in hives. I would be completely covered in hives. So when I went back to school to become a nutritionist and, tried to get my business going the first time around in 2013, I had this realization that, well, crap, this means I need to become a personal brand. Like I'm going to actually have to market myself. And the options at the time were go be an entrepreneur and learn how to market yourself. This was even before video was mandatory. This is, I'm just talking blog posts here and, very basic Facebook posts at the time. But my options were, figure out how to become an entrepreneur and a personal brand or go work in a clinic and make half as much as I was making in advertising. So it became this roller coaster journey of leaving advertising to start my business and then going back to advertising with my tail between my legs. And it was this roller coaster of a journey. And finally, in 2015, after getting fired from a couple jobs, I was like, okay, enough's enough. I got to figure this out. And so I really went on this journey of owning my own personal brand. And it was such a big deal for me to let go of what I call the business guise that I had. I was hiding behind these cutesy business names. I was Nutritionista Living. I was like all these different, cutesy nutrition names. And my business coach at the time said, what if you just be Cara Rice? And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean be Cara Rice? Like, I can't just be me. She's like, yeah, maybe ease back on all the food pictures on your website. And how about we put your face there and your name there and you actually be you? And I was like, what? That's terrifying. I can't do that. So, there was a lot of mindset work that needed to happen in order to officially launch cararice.com. That was, I think it was May 2015 when I finally launched my personal brand. And this was before video. This was before Facebook Lives. This was before Insta stories, all of that. So at this point, I wasn't even tackling video. It was really about just owning my brand and declaring that I was quote unquote good enough to be a brand. So there's some beliefs happening behind there. So that was the first step for me is deciding that I was good enough to put my name and face out there and actually own it.
And it's scary, right? I mean, we hear stories all the time about people, being criticized online and kind of having that feeling of being exposed. Is that kind of the feelings that were going through your head at the
Mm-hmm.
time?
Mm-hmm. I had all of this, especially because I was coaching on nutrition at the time. I coach on business now, but at the time I was coaching on nutrition, and I find a lot of my clients who are in the wellness space struggle with this as well. But there was this belief I had that I had to be 100% perfectly healthy and like eat perfectly clean, and like just basically everything had to be perfect in order for people to trust me as an authority on what I was teaching and coaching on. And so I really struggled with, I guess, what many call imposter syndrome of, but I haven't got all this figured out yet. Like, I'm not perfect yet. And it was a big struggle to overcome that fear and take the first step in saying, hey world, I'm here. This is my nutrition coaching program, and really getting clear on what's the transformation that I can support my clients with. It doesn't necessarily have to be this massive journey I take them through, but maybe there are a few steps behind me and I can support them on that A to B journey, whatever that is for them, and support them over 90 days, 6 months. And that was really helpful for me to see it like that, instead of looking at like, I have to be this, this guru in order
Yeah.
to sign clients, right?
Exactly. And I feel like social media definitely agitates that feeling, because we see all of these gurus with their perfectly curated feeds and feel like we have to fit
Mm-hmm.
into that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just showing up as you are is really what's important. And you've mentioned a few times this concept of video. And I know that you do video now, but
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't always easy for you. So tell us about the transition into also showing up in video.
Yeah. Yeah. So like the first phase was really sharing my story in written form, right? So I was sharing my own health journey, and realizing as I started doing that, I was realizing that people were really connecting to the authenticity of, oh, like I don't have it together all the time. Like I make quote unquote mistakes, and I'm still working on this. And I started to realize that people really resonated with that. And so around 2017 is when, I think that's when Facebook Live took off. I'm not sure if Insta stories were there yet, but video is really becoming sort of a non-negotiable in the online space. And I made the connection between that authenticity piece and the just like the vulnerability piece of just showing up as you. And I tied that together and thought, hey, if people could actually get to know me as me and see me talking, see me, like occasionally, like I get the like red marks on my neck, and like actually see me as a real human, they might connect with me more. And so I started to connect those dots. So it was not easy by any means. And I have a funny story. Do you like mojitos?
Oh yeah, I'm more of a margarita person, but I do
Okay.
like mojitos too.
Well, I was like, okay, I've got to do this first video. This was actually maybe 2016. And I was like, I got to do a video. What can I do a video on that will, just help rip the Band-Aid off and get some practice with doing videos. So it's like, I'll do a mojito demo. Like I'm known with my friends to be like the mojito making expert. So I thought I'll make a mojito demo just to practice being on video. And I had so many bloopers because I probably had, 5 or 6 mojitos as I was creating this demo. So that was my first foray into video. And then in 2017, it was sort of the trend to have your promo video on your website of who you are, what your signature offer is. And I hired my photographer at the time. I hired her to do a full brand video, and we did a whole like an about me video. We did an introduction to my signature program, and it probably took, oh man, like hours and hours, because there were so many takes, because I was stumbling over what I was saying, and I was bursting into tears because it was so uncomfortable, and I was getting so frustrated with myself. Like, why isn't this coming out the way I want it to? And then we'd do it again, and 6 months later, I'd do another video and it would get easier. And then I'd do another video. And then I started doing Facebook Lives first in my private Facebook group. And then, Insta stories came out. And just with practice, I got more and more comfortable and I stopped worrying about everything sounding perfect. And I think the beautiful thing that's happened with social media is that no one expects it to be perfect anymore, especially with live video, right? When you're doing a professional video shoot, and it's going to be edited, and it's there's an element there of like I can mess up because we're going to edit this and piece it together and it's going to look perfect and great. What I love about live video is that it's okay, like you're forced to just keep going if you make mistakes, and I think that was really, really helpful.
Yes, I love that. And I think I'm a huge fan of live video too, first of all, because of that. And my people know this. I've got dogs. They may be wrestling in the background. I stumble over my words. I forget words. And I think that's human nature. I think that human component of it is so important.
Mhm.
And we oftentimes forget that because we see the perfectly polished videos and we're used to consuming videos that are polished. If we think about just the way that we watch TV or anything like that, movies, they're all these like massive productions. But when it comes to creating video for social, in fact, going the other way can actually be more of a help to you than having these perfectly produced videos. So can you talk us through kind of what your strategy is now, how video plays a role in that, and how you show up specifically in your social media marketing today?
Yeah. So I going back to 2015, my tagline was "Your story matters." So when I transitioned from nutrition coaching into business mentoring, I was really leading with this concept that I had uncovered of, whoa, like be a real human, share your own health journey. Your ideal clients are going to resonate with this because there's less pressure for them to get it perfect, and they see what's possible for them. If you're more of a real human and you have flaws and you're still on the journey just a few steps ahead of them, your ideal client is going to see themselves in you. And so as I uncovered this and was working on this in my own business, I started mentoring other health coaches who were more introverted themselves too and struggling with visibility and sharing their story. And my tagline at the time was "Your story matters." And I actually did the Wayback Machine the other day to see my old website. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like all connected to visibility. And so this piece about "Your story matters" has really been the through line over the last few years in my business, whether I'm specifically coaching introverts. Now I'm doing more, training in NLP. So I've, not specifically leading with coaching introverts, although I tend to attract introverts. But the through line of this is really about it's okay to not have it all together. And so a big part of my strategy and what I teach my clients, whether they're introverts or not, is there's so many lessons in your journey. And it's not necessarily that you have to show up and be a video diary of what's going on a day-to-day basis, real time, like airing your quote unquote dirty laundry and like sharing real time, like what's happening. But when you're through it and you're on the other side of it and there's a teaching moment there, how can you leverage that? How can you use that? How can you show up as a real human and make use of what you've just gone through, what you've experienced, and how can you share that with your audience and your ideal client as a teaching moment? And so that's what I really support my clients to do is like, okay, you've just gone through this, you've had this lesson. How can you make use of it? What's the teaching moment? And then go share it. Right. And so that I think is just so powerful for anyone. Of course, I primarily coach coaches, but this applies to anyone with a personal brand, anyone with a service-based business. There's probably so many teaching moments you're leaving on the table out of fear that you're going to be judged for sharing it.
Yes, yes. And I love that that's really embedded itself in the work that you do. I'm curious how it shows up for your own business, like how you market yourself on social media. And if you still struggle with some of those initial fears as well. And if you do, how do you kind of move past them with your own storytelling strategies?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, like, the fear never completely goes away. Like, I'm sure you relate to this, but
Yes.
you get better at working with it. And I think what oftentimes a lot of people are like, oh, I just want to be able to get rid of this fear. And what's actually happening is it's not so much the fear. It's not so much the fear, because we can turn fear, if we're going to feel into fear, it kind of feels like anxiety. We can turn anxiety into excitement, right? We can easily do a mindset reframe there and change it to excitement, right? That's easy to change. What we do need to work on, though, is the limiting beliefs that are getting in the way. Because if you don't feel worthy, if you don't feel good enough, if you don't feel like what you have to say matters, it's going to be more difficult to show up, because it's like, well, who gives a crap what I'm about to say, right? So I find that, like, introvert or not, every client I've worked with, when we do our belief clearing sessions, I do a technique called mental emotional release as part of the mind surgery method. Every single client I've ever had, when we do this belief clearing process that I teach in my certification, every single one of my clients has had an unconscious belief that we've uncovered in the session, that I'm not good enough. We can always still distill it down to I'm not good enough. And I've yet to this day, in my over 3 years of practicing NLP, come across a client who doesn't have this belief. So that's what we need to be working on, is the I'm not good enough belief. And it's not necessarily that we're walking around all day saying, oh, I'm not good enough. It's not like a conscious mind thing that we're thinking all day long. It might pop up here and there at inappropriate times, like in ideal times when you're about to go live and do the things. But when it comes up is when things are going well. Things start going well, and then back here, and if you're listening to the audio of this, I'm like waving my hand behind my head, but back here, it's like a little whisper of, you're not good enough, you're not worthy. And that's how you have this unconscious belief driving the show behind the scenes. And so that's what I really work on with my clients, is the limiting beliefs that aren't necessarily the day-to-day thoughts, but that show up when either things are going well, or you're just about to go live, or you're just about to do, a training in your group, or you're just about to go into a launch, right? It's when it pops up.
Yes, it does. And it never really goes away, like you said. Always there. You just learn to work with it like a little friend.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to shift gears as we wrap up the conversation today to talk about the technical stuff as far as social media marketing goes. So, would you say your main platform is Instagram?
Instagram and my Facebook group. I have a free Facebook group.
Okay. So when it comes to like creating content to speak to these coaches on Instagram, walk us through your process.
Yeah, so it depends if I am creating nurture content in between launches, or if I'm creating content to funnel into a launch, because I have different programs. But I typically start with the sales page. So whatever I'm selling. So if I'm creating content for a program, let's just say my certification, for example, I'll start first with the sales page, and then get clear on like what are the topic pillars there on the sales page. What are the core, pieces of content that I have there, and then I build it out from there. I find that really helpful. I also work in a way where there's some content that I plan out in advance, but I primarily work in a really inspired, like I call it taking inspired action, of checking in each day of I do a visualization every morning of the version of you who, and I step into this next level version of me who's already achieved the thing I'm trying to achieve. And it could be, a goal that I'm working towards, this month. It could be 6 months from now. It could be 2 years from now. It's, depending what I'm working on at the time. And I ask myself, future me, what is it I'm meant to share today? What is the message I have to share today? Who needs to hear it and where? And so I tend to create the inspired content that way, of like, what's the very simple message I'm meant to share today? And sometimes that translates into a simple Instagram post that's just written out. And sometimes it's an impromptu Facebook Live in my group. And sometimes it's content that I'll go draft out and save for an email or something.
I love the inspired action piece to this, because I think there's no wrong way to showing up as long as you show up consistently, whatever that means for you. I love that. And I think a lot of people listening will find relief in that, because some people need the guidance and the structure and kind of like more of the hand holding of like, post this on this day at this time. But a lot of people, especially those listening who may feel more intuitive and kind of lead their lives that way, will love the inspired action piece as well, of kind of checking in with yourself and your future self, and seeing what that has in store for you. Which leads me to talking about this idea of the version of you who I know you have this visualization that you can offer to the audience. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I started doing this guided visualization with my clients probably about a year ago. And it just transpired into this. I've incorporated some NLP techniques in there. We adjust what we call the submodalities, which is the characteristics of the picture. So we turn the picture, the brightness up, the contrast, like you can make the picture look, most real, most intense for you. So I started doing this visualization about a year ago, and it's really turned into this core foundational piece of my certification program of the mind surgery method. And the reason I put this in my program, and the reason I have this as a freebie, is it's always the first step. It should always be the first step. Whatever you're creating, it is getting really clear on what the goal is. And the best way my old tagline was "Your story matters," which is still completely relevant. My new tagline is "The best business strategy is believing in yourself." And so in order to believe in yourself, you got to start with, okay, well, it's already done. I've already done it. Stepping into the version of you who's already done it. So if you can step into, future you and see what that looks like, hear what that sounds like, feel what that feels like, then it's so much easier to work backwards, right? It's so much easier to be like, well, I've already done it. I saw it. Like I went into the vision, I can see it already done. It's already happened. An alternate universe, this has already happened. So who better to ask what next step to take than future you? So I've created this guided visualization. It's about 8 minutes. And it walks you through creating the picture in your mind. And the funny thing is that you may not even know going into this visualization what exactly you're creating, because I guide you through the process of creating it. And everyone who's done this is so surprised at the vision that comes to them. They're like, I went into this thinking I was going to be working on this goal. But as I was going through the process of the visualization, something else dropped in and gave me a new idea, and I have a new perspective on it. So in this visualization, I take you through this process, and it's something you can use on a daily basis to reconnect to that goal, to reconnect to that vision, to step into the version of you who's already done the thing you're trying to achieve, so that throughout the day, as you're doing your checklist items, you're going through your strategy, ticking the things off your list, you're doing it in the energy of, it's already done. Like the work I'm doing is working because I'm doing it in an aligned way to the version of me who's already done it. You're in that energy, and it's so powerful, because I don't know if you can relate to this too. I think most of us have related to, there's some times where you follow all the action steps, you do the strategy to a T, and sometimes it works. And once in a while, it didn't go so well. But when you reflect back, you're like, I didn't actually believe it was possible. Or there was a secondary gain from it not working. And so I find this so, so powerful to step into, like on a daily basis, or even if a couple times a week, if, you can't do it every day, but to reconnect to that vision and step into the energy of, it's already happening, it's already done. And I'm taking these action steps based on it already being done. And then you're more likely to achieve your goal because you believe it, because you see it. You were just there. You were just in it.
Ooh, that's so good. So for those of you listening or watching who want to grab this guided visual, oh my gosh, say that 10 times fast, visualization. I'll put the link with the description of the video or in the podcast show notes. Definitely check it out, grab it, practice it, and maybe reach out to Cara and let her know what came up for you. Cara, where else can we find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Cara Rice Coaching. It's Cara with a C. And in my 6-figure mindset coaches group, it's my free group on Facebook, as well as cararice.com.
Perfect. And I'll put all of those links with the show notes. Thanks again, Cara, for joining us on the show today. Make sure you stay tuned for next week. We're talking to my friend Sarah all about copywriting. We're shifting into our next topic, which is about micro habits and mindfulness, and really ties into this conversation so well. So stay tuned for that episode next time. And hey, if you love the show, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate all of your support. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.